So it's had 2 coats of Future now, completely everywhere. I allowed about 10 minutes drying time between each of them. As we can see, it's all a bit more glossy now, a bit more shiny. The guns aren't as flat, I think, as the A-10A is. They've got a little bit more glossiness to them. Obviously this has had quite a few coats, so it's actually very, very rough in a lot of areas. But I'm actually going to use this to my advantage, because when we weather it, hopefully the weathering is going to stick to this a bit more than it would normally, and it'll give it that nice dirty look. And then once we're all totally done, I'm going to go around it again and do a little bit of post shading, a little bit of touch-in work and various bits and pieces like they have in real life. So what we're going to do now is get on with the actual decaling itself, the decaling itself. So what we've got, we're going to be doing the shark mouth one, because quite frankly any A10 looks good with it, and it's one of my favourites, and I haven't actually done a Euro 1 scheme as this one is. Done lots of the two-tone grey, but for this one it's very nice. It really brings it to life. So what I'm going to do now, we've covered the decaling many times, and there's full videos on it as well. So I'm going to get on now and totally decal this, and you can join me when I'm done. Okay, so that's the decaling all done. You see we've got that very nice shark's mouth all over. 2 coats of clear of Future right over the top. We've gone around, we've checked for silvering, we're quite happy with how they've all gone on. And to be honest, I've used the kit decals, and I'm actually very impressed. They're very, very thin, to the point where I thought they were going to tear, to be honest. But they didn't, they held their own. They went on absolutely fantastically. Got a couple of little touch-ups to do underneath here around the wells, obviously just where the blue tack was hanging over just a touch, so I can do them by hand in a moment. I've done the fan blades. Don't know how well you can see them in the light there, but I've painted them silver by hand. It's quite easy to get now. Use a flat brush and just tap to the edges to go round. A lot easier than it would be trying to cut a paper mask and things like that. So that's all done. It's been drying overnight with the Future, so we're all happy now. And obviously now I'm going to use the dark wash and then just to see how it goes. And because we're going to go on quite a dark surface, I also might mix a little bit of black wash with it as well, just to darken it up a bit so you can see it a little bit better on the actual dark green and certainly the black areas. But obviously for the light green area, we'll just stick with using the normal dark wash. So basically, damn good shake, he says, throwing it everywhere. Okay, get a soft brush, wiggle it around the bottom. As I say, it's got nice coats on here, and as you can see it's pooling up just a little bit, so we're just going to have to work it in. Just keep rubbing it around and work it into those panel lines and all the other bits, just like so. So I'm going to get the wash on everywhere. We'll let it dry and then we can get it off, and then we can go around and do some more weathering, a little bit of post shading and other bits and pieces to it. Okay, wash is on and dried, the grey wash, which is like the dark wash, and what I've done, if you can see there, I've gone along with some of the black wash and just splattered it on the top. Now the great thing about this, let's see how you can see this, turn it around the other way, you might see it better. But as you can see the pattern. If we bring you in a little bit, you can probably see the pattern on the wings, where it's actually running back. I know you've got a bit of glare in there, but you can see it sort of runs back and does its thing, which is how it works in real life. And what we're going to do is let that dry on top of the grey, and then when we take it off, hopefully we'll get some nice coloration between the two. So what I've done is I put some on top of the engines, and it just runs off. Now if you're going to be doing armour and bits and pieces like that, you can always just leave it on top as it is. To do that. This is the new black. It's a new formula of it, unless you're watching this in a couple of months. In that case it's an old formula, but it's slightly different to the way it goes. Basically the pigment count is now double of what it actually was before. The clay is a lot finer and we've refined it, so it actually flows. You literally, it's a touch and it goes. Where the other one was a little bit gritty and we had separation issues and things like that, I've now completely reformulated. It's a brand new one and it works a treat, the same as the mud is as well. So now basically they all work the same as the original two. So there you go, that's a quick rundown on how it's working. But as you can say, it brings that sort of, it brings that sort of nice effect. So hopefully we're going to be able to get the different tones in there and some of the panel lines to be different, and it will just hopefully just bring it all nicely weathered in. We can get this off, we can pop around it with a little bit of post shading everywhere, which means we're just going to put some dark areas in and some smudges and bits and pieces we can do with the airbrush. Then we can get a flat coat in over the top of it all, and then we can actually then get it unmasked and start getting it all together. At the same time, I've done a little bit of silver work onto the undercarriage here, as you might be able to see. Basically what I've done is I've just done the cabling in silver. I'm going to let that dry, black wash, going to touch it on and let it flow, and hopefully it'll fill in any little gaps that I've missed. And then the same I've done the nose wheel, I've done the hubs with a little bit of black as well, and I've put some silver inside the light, so when the clear part goes in on the top, hopefully it'll just blend it all together and make it all look nice. And there we go, that's with the wash completely off now, been all the way around it. Usual thing, get your cotton wool buds, pinch it with your teeth just to get in it, in those last little corners and various bits and pieces. Check it under daylight as well to make sure you've got your wash out. Avoid any little nooks and crannies you want to clean it out of, because obviously the next stage is we're going to put a flat coat on over the top just to hold the wash all in place, and obviously it'll darken the wash slightly as well. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to put a flat coat right over the entire thing, and then we can get with some post shading. Okay, so there's a flat coat on. It's not a totally dead flat like we would normally do, it's just a sort of standard one, but it's helped then seal in obviously the wash and the panel lines and all the bits and pieces. It was just a 50-50 mix with flat varnish, and this is the extra acrylics one. So it's very straightforward, and it's still slightly shiny. It's not like a dead flat finish as we'd normally do before. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do a bit of post shading. Now you could use Tamiya Smoke is one, but it's quite a glossy finish. I tend to just use a normal sort of flat black. In this case we could be using Tamiya XF1. Then this is basically a mix of about 10% paint to 90% thinners. So all we'll do, we've got the airbrush all loaded up here, so always thinners in first. So we're going to put about 1 mil of thinners just in there. Okay, then we're just going to take a tiny brush full of black into the colour cup, and you want it to look like dirty thinners. You don't want it actually sticking to the side of the colour cup. I'll just bring you in a touch. So you want it to sort of look like this type of business on there, so it really is just like a dirty thinners, as we'd say, and it's more, certainly more of a wash really than it is a paint, because obviously what you want this to do is seamlessly blend in. Okay, compressor on, you want good pressure, but you're not going to need as much, so if we just turn the pressure down a little bit to about 25 psi, 20-25 psi. Okay, check your flow. Okay, I've got it in front of me because obviously you want it to be away from you if you're doing anywhere at all. So little things like little refueling areas, doors, they catch dirt, so that gets a little spray running backwards, and then we're just going to run the line along the panel line. Okay, so we've got a line of rivets there, so we're just running it along. So really what we're doing, where we would do pre-shading, we're actually just doing it in reverse, and we're putting it on the top. So anywhere that gets sort of dirty, just run it around the flat area. And then obviously access doors, things like that tend to get a bit dirty, and then pick out various little bits you can do. And then just always flick it backwards. We want to be working back, not forward. Get some dirt around the flaps. Bits coming off of here and there. As I say, just work it backwards with your post shading, and then I don't know how well you're going to be able to pick this up on camera, but here we have that wing post shaded, and you can see it a little bit there, and it just gives it that nice sort of blended in sort of dirty look around the actual rivet areas without going too overboard with it all, because obviously you don't want it to be sort of in your face, so that by keeping the paint nice and thin it won't have an opportunity to sort of really put down heavy paint, because it's always going to be liquid, it's always just going to blend in, and you can gently build it up. So it's a good idea to do an area, then move on to the next area, and just work your way around the entire model. So I'll just carry on, and you can watch for a little bit more. So what we'll do over here this little tile. Okay, so then we can work our way on the fuselage, and this is one of those things where you just want it to be happy as you are. And there we go. You can see there on that fuselage side. And then obviously you can go in, things like where crew get in and out, they tend to be a little bit more grubby. Vents, exhausts, any area like that, they tend to pick up a little bit more than elsewhere, and then just run randomly with your thing around. So obviously, you know, this is where reference photos are very good, but things like in this area here, this route, the crews climb up above to get to the back and the tails, so you could just wang in a bit more dirt around this area than you would elsewhere to sort of simulate sort of crew moving up, and you could scuff it. I've got some photos actually on the website. If you look at the A-10 walk around that I've actually got in the forum, you can see the boot scuffs as they're getting up there to put onto the actual FOD covers onto the engines, little things like that. So anyway, I'm just going to carry on now and go right the way around the entire model until I'm finished. Okay, so that's the actual post shading done. As you can see, if I bring you in a bit there, you can see I've drawn what I call the H block, where basically ground crews come up and they put on FOD covers, check in engines and walk to the back. And I always call it the H block because they tend to always walk the same way, usually come up onto a wing, over the top, and so you're going to get a bar along the wing area like here, then it goes to the rear, and then obviously they walk along there, so it's like an H shape. And I tend to, what happens is when I've actually finished doing all my post shading everywhere, I'll actually go around and just continuously, just literally figure of eights, block gears all over, and do this H shape, and then that way you get that sort of warped effect, which I'm trying to do there, which I don't know how much you can pick out on camera. But like that. But we've done the underside as well, so that's it. So this is the difference. Pre-shading works very, very well and a lot better on greys. If you're going to be doing a modern Navy aircraft or any type of modern aircraft where it's in a grey, basically if you pre-shade, it bleeds through and you get that nice natural colour. If you're very confident with your airbrushing, you can always just forget that, scrap that area and just literally go along, and that's what I've done here. And this is what we call post-shading, where you actually put it in afterwards. Obviously you do need a certain amount of skill with it, because one mistake with the airbrush and you flood an area completely, or you slip or something like that, before you know it, you've got a big mess and you've got to try and clear it up. If you're using this Tamiya or guns, or certainly Valeris and things like that, and you thin them right down, if you really overcook it completely and you blast the area and flood it, if you just leave it, it should evaporate off. You'll have a little bit more there perhaps than what you wanted, but certainly from the point of view of the modelling, you wouldn't have ruined it, say, if you were using a 50-50 mix, something like that. So that's the plan with it, and that shows it off. But as I say, it's a lot better when you're doing it something like on a camouflage, a European one, perhaps on the obviously Second World War aircraft, things like that. It's a lot easier to actually post-shade it than it is to actually pre-shade it. And things like that, because it shows through a lot better and you can work at it. One of those things, less is best. Don't go over the top and put tons in. You're better to have a subtle effect than what you would be to actually have a full-blown, lots of marks and showing all the rest of it. Now at this point you can say, okay, I've had enough of it there, I think that looks about right, which I must admit I'm starting to think with this one, or you can continue forward. Things you could do now is the chipping, which we've covered in other videos, but you could literally go around and do some little chips out of it here and there. Obviously leading edge wings tend to get them, obviously crew where they're moving up, so we were saying you could do boot marks, things like that all over it. The other thing obviously modern aircraft get is touch-ups. Perhaps access panels and that, they're being worn down where they're continuously being opened and closed, and then obviously they'll come along and just spray in those particular areas. Obviously as the paint has faded down, they'll come along with the neat colour as we would, and just use your bottle of, say the green on this one, neat, and just blow in little tiny areas, perhaps little access panels, things like that, to give them as if they've been looked in. Okay, so now it's time to put on one of the last flat coats. We might put another one after it, depends on how much this one needs. A lot thicker of the actual extra acrylics. We're running really about 10% thinners into there. I don't want it to be totally dead as we've done before. I want it to have a little bit of work, because European one, they tend to be a little bit more shiny than certainly other aircraft. So what we've done, got the air pressure maxed out, and we're just literally going to put a coat on quite random and just work our way around the entire model. Obviously when you're working with a full colour cup, it's best not to do that and go straight over the top of your model, just in case you do end up dripping somehow. Okay, I've just put the tyres onto the hubs, and I must admit they are absolutely fantastic. They fit on and they've, as I said before, they've got that nice flat black look, that sort of rubbery look. All too often you get them and they've got rubber tyres and they're real glossy. So what I normally do is sand them down with a sanding sponge, quite a coarse one, to take the edge off of them. But I must admit, they're absolutely fantastic. They've got a groove on the inside, but they are solid, so you're not going to have to worry about them in years to come perishing and falling apart. So they're all okay. I've got the undercarriage here, and what literally all I've done is given it a bit of brush with the new black wash, which has got a better flow, if you like. It runs a lot better than the old one did, and it doesn't give that gritty look when it dries, so you can just brush it on now and leave it. So they're drying as well, so as soon as they're dry we can start thinking about getting the undercarriage plugged in. The next big thing to do, as I say, we sprayed them all on the sprues, but they're all here. They just went the same way. They were done with the dark green to put them all in, and then what's going to happen is that they had a wash over the top, and they had a little bit of, when I was doing the post shading going around, I shaded these as well. So now what I'm going to do is get these all fitted on. Very straightforward. They just literally plug in as we go. We can get them on, and we can get these back aerials put in at the same time, and all the little navigation and aerial little bits can be done now. Right then, time to arm the A-10. Obviously what I'm going to do is, we've got the ECM pod and the sidewinders, because they hang out quite a bit and they are a click fit, they will hold themselves. I'm not going to actually fit them yet in case we knock them off. We're going to do the standard type of loadout, looking at references. Obviously sometimes you see the A10 and it's got triple rails for Mavericks and things like that. Reality is apparently there's that much drag caused by them, they don't really carry them, and they tend to just carry single rail sidewinders just on the outside. So we're going to do just the same thing. So we're going to load this up with clusters Mark 82s. So basically we're just going to put the sidewinders, sorry, not the sidewinders, the Mavericks haven't got the IR Seeker glass in yet, because it's going to have another flat coat, a final flat coat. So all we're going to do, we sort of dry fit first just to see how it's all going to sit, make sure it's all okay. If we're happy how it is, just come along. We're going to use a bit of our normal extra thin glue, and we're just going to pop it in the line up pins, and we just put a drop around each pin just on there. Okay, then we're just going to come along, line it up and sit that in. Now the reason I'm using this versus normal glue, normal sort of CA glue, which I normally do weapons, is these aren't hanging out, they're not going to ping off like others would. So that's why I'm in with quite a heavy duty glue, so these stay on forevermore and don't get knocked off. Okay, let's line this one up as well. It says I'm missing the hole. We'll set that one on like that. Clusters, same thing. Just put a drop of glue around the thing. Now there isn't any sway braces with these, and I haven't put any on, to be honest. I was going to do it, but I'm sort of running out of time really, so for the purposes of sort of a swift build, we're not going to, but it'd be quite easy to do some simple photo etch, or using a bit of PE sprue left over. You can easily bend them down to make sway braces, which is something I'll cover with you in a later build. So we just flip this over so we can see our armed A10, and I'm happy to say it's not a tail sitter, which was a very big concern, but there we go. That's looking the business from the underside. As I say, you could load this up many times. I've seen them, they've got laser guided bombs and huge things hanging off of them, and big weapons and ordnance and things, but when you look at obviously all the reference pictures and things like that, they too tend to just carry what they need to perform the mission. They're not out there laser guiding, then cluster bombing, then free fall bombing, and then retarded bombing and things like that. They're out there, do one mission, do it, get it done, come home, rearm, refuel, and go out and do it again. So there we go, that's basically done. We're almost to the point now where we can just get on. I'm going to put the boarding ladder, and we're going to sort that on next. I've actually painted it up, just need to open the door and sort it. Yellow obviously, and then black for the telescopic bit where it fits all back up, so we can get that fitted in a moment. Then we can get our canopy fitted back on. Another clear coat of flat going to go right over, just to take care of any shiny parts that perhaps we've got. Obviously the weapons need to be toned down a little bit now, and the other bits and pieces, and then we can get it unmasked, and we can get the clear work all done, and put on, like the navigation lights that go on the wingtips because they're clear, I haven't put them on yet, and a few other bits and pieces, little bits of touch ups here and there. A little bit of detail on the refueling door, but I'm worried about knocking it off, so that's why that hasn't gone on yet. And then we can get on and we can ready for the final reveal. Okay, so we're all getting there now. Obviously, we've got the seat still to go in, which is a major thing. But for the moment, what we're going to do is going to do all the lights and various other bits and pieces on there. Now it's got the final flat coat on, we can move forward for this. Obviously, you get lots and lots of ones on here. The wing outer ones, it's probably best to paint them slightly separate and just to touch them in, but you've actually got the wing outer ones in here. Then obviously we've got the undercarriage doors, and then we've got the actual lens caps, of which we will do now. Okay, so now working on the canopy, and I've got the back part there, which is the resin part, goes in there, and also we've got some photo etch mirrors in there, if you can see them up against the back of my head. There we go, see those in there. So we can leave that off to one side to dry. Now, attaching those photo etch parts, I've used gator glue in every case, just in case you have any of the problems as it coming up. Now, the actual way that the canopy fits, it's a bit of a handful. Basically, you've got this part in here. I'll just bring you in a minute. We've got this part in here, this bottom part, and then obviously you get this bit here. And this is going to click in like so into here. I know it's all black and a bit hard to see, and then this leading edge with the two prongs here fits onto the back part of the seat there, which holds the canopy up. Now, this is one of those things, because hopefully this one will be going to the shows with me and various things like that. This is one of mine, and obviously if it was going to go through the packing thing, obviously you wouldn't have the canopy up, because the chances of it making through okay are going to be quite slim. So we can either fit it in here in the back of the canopy and then rest it on the back, but I think the best way of doing it is going to actually be fitting this part here to the back of the seat like so. See how well you can see that. If we bring it round and zoom you in. Yeah, if we bring it round and fit it to the back of the seat, like so, it's on here now. We can fix that in position, and then when this top part comes along and fits in, it can then rest on it and fit in there. With any luck, they're all fit together, as it will do in just like this. If you can see it just happening in there, it's going to come in and rest in there. But when it's in the rear position, like so, hopefully it will just come in and it's going to sit in there just like that. So that's the thing with that, but it is a bit of a concern because it's going to be quite a fragile area of doing it. In the meantime, I've just started painting the seat up. I've still got the block on the bottom. I'll keep that on until last and I can just sand it off. I've done the black seat cushions and the side parts of the head box, and then I'm going to paint the rest of it. I'm going to hand paint it. I've checked it out and the paint goes on there very, very well, and I'm going to do it just in Tamiya's. So there's lots of them doing the Aces 2 seats on the rest of the site, so I won't go through it, but basically flat black for the actual seat cushions. And then I'm going to use X54 for grey for doing the seat, and then I'll just pick out all the little details, and then with the handles and the bits and pieces, just a little bit of yellow over there to do that. So that's going to be quite simple. Then we'll cut the bottom off and then can fit it into the runners. So that one's very straightforward to do. And that's basically it. We're almost coming to the end. I've painted the aerials black. One of the aerials that I took off at the front here I'm going to have to replace, and I'm just going to do that with a little piece of plastic card, stick that on, it's painted black, and we can move through. Right, so we're just putting the final touches on here, and one of the things that the A-10 has is the cordage which runs down the middle of the seam. You get them on Tomcats and other aircraft, but it's quite prominent on the A-10. Now it is moulded in there, but obviously you need to colour that because it looks a little bit odd as it's not there done. So what I've actually got is a little bit of insulating tape. So what I'm going to do, it's in black, and I'm going to lay that actually down there and try and get it in. Now it's going to be a little bit tricky to get this in, but as long as we get the start place right, it should work its way back quite easily. Okay, so once you've got it in there, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a push with the cotton bud, and then from the top side, there we go, you can see it, but you get that nice straight line with no problems. You could possibly run a little bit of something or other down there to see how it goes, but there we go, then it'll sit on there just like that. which I know is slightly out of shot, and gives us a nice step like that. Okay, so final bits to go in. Just got to do the photo etch for the seat, tidy up a little few bits and pieces, and we're done. And there we go, all finished. Lovely kit to work with. We've covered a lot on this particular build. Obviously, we've gone through the resin and various other bits and pieces. We did have trouble with the paint and obviously changing paint colours. So obviously, behind the scenes, what you didn't see was a lot of editing to change it over and things like that. So I probably didn't cover it as well as it would have been a start to finish type thing. Differences we did on this build, just to recap, obviously we used the thinners with the actual putty, putting it into the thinners like we did onto here and do it. It's a great way of doing it. Things to watch out for though is shrinkage. It does shrink back. It's just that it seems a really good easy way of filling, but in all honesty it's not the bestest way to do it. If you can let the actual filler dry and sand it off naturally or without using any filler to do your test fitting and things like that, obviously fuselage halves, it's a bad kit, it's going to take its time and to get it right, things like that. So it's not the quick fix. Don't think, oh great, look, I'm never going to have to sand again, because you are still going to have to sand again, because it will shrink back and you do have to sand it off. You are going to get lumps and bumps, things like that. There's a few things on the forums that some of the guys have put up about thinners that don't actually melt the plastic, as in this one did. So have a look in there, and there's lots of details, and we're obviously filling it up. There's lots of stills on the site as well to go through, things like that. We use Guns paints on this one, which is the first time I've used it. Basically, I can't fault them at all. They're a fantastic product. They really, really do go well. They spray beautifully. They actually, the way that they actually go down, there's very, very little spitting. The other good thing about it as well was clogging. There wasn't a lot of clogging going on. Obviously, with acrylics, you get the build up on the end of the needle and then it spits. Didn't have any problem with that, so that was all very, very nice. The kit itself goes together beautifully. The only things really, you have to have a think about is make sure you've got enough nose weight in this. As I say, if you leave that nose door open like I did, you can get it together, then have a look, and then stick some more lead down there if you have to. The riveting detail itself, a lot of people have said it's a bit heavy and all the rest of it. Personally, I quite like it because we've done the post shading on this instead of the pre-shading. It also gives a little bit of depth to it as well, and you're filling it up. As I say, this probably had about 9 coats of paint in total, and a couple of coats of flat varnish on as well. So the riveting, it being thicker, worked to my advantage a lot, because obviously I filled it up every time I was doing it. Re-riveting, we used this little tool this time, which is the trumpeter tool. For running around the backs here and over the side. £2.50, I think you're not going to find any better. It's a great little tool. It's made by Trumpeter. It's called their riveting wheel. You get the different sizes of wheels on there as well, but I literally just zipped over everywhere with it. Very, very quick, very, very easy tool to use. So if you want to invest in £2.50 in something, I would certainly invest in one of those, because they are very, very good. Post shading versus pre-shading that we did on this one, obviously it's personal choice. When I'm doing camo like this, usually I will pre-shade as well as I'll post-shade, but for this particular one I wanted it to look dirty. I wanted it to have that sort of well-worn, sort of dirty, blended down type of look. I didn't want it to look like it just come out of a factory, and I hope you can see there that sort of H shape that we were talking about with the walkways. It comes through quite well. Just keep it all random and things like that. I've given it a dead flat coat as well over the top to really flatten this down, although because we've got very strong lights in here, you're still getting reflections. Reality, I'm looking at it, I can't see a thing, it's totally dead flat. But there we go. The Aries cockpit that went in there, make sure your spread is okay. It's a little bit tricky because it will spread as they usually do, but it certainly came together very, very well. The Avenger gun that we've got down here, it's a lovely little detailed piece of kit. It's a shame it doesn't come on a stand. It would have been nice if the kit had actually just come with a little bit of sprue to put it on a stand, and then we could have done it. Obviously you could scratch build one out, but it would have been a shame to build something like that which then would sit in here and you're never going to see it again, which is a real shame. But you do get the 2 gun barrels, and do it the way we did it, and away you go. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed the build, and if you have, join me again next time.